Let's cook in Timberwolves. All right, so for this recipe, in keeping with my apple theme this week, we will be doing apple cinnamon muffins. I'm actually going to change it up by using some rhubarb that I got from the store and froze yesterday. But you guys can just do the traditional apple and you'll be fine. Or if you are just not a fan of apples, you can do another fruit. That's totally fine as well. Okay? So for this recipe, I would probably say that this is an intermediate recipe only because there is going to be a portion that I'm going to be using my KitchenAid mixer. If you do not have a countertop mixer, you can always use a hand mixer, which is the electric one that plugs in that has the beaters. Or you can use a wooden spoon. That totally and absolutely works. I have definitely used that to cream sugar and fat, which is what we're going to talk about today. Yeah, just takes a little bit more grunt work. All right, so for this recipe, it's super, super delicious. It just makes a really good muffin that basically tastes like apple crisp in a muffin. And you guys, I don't know if you guys have realized this, but I love muffins. All right, so here's the recipe. It is a two-sided recipe, so there are 2 pages. So here's the first page. And then there's the second. And as far as ingredients go, this is probably the most complicated or as many ingredients as I've done with any of the recipes before. It doesn't mean it's like super hard, but what I'm gonna do is actually pre-measure everything, and then I will move on over to my KitchenAid mixer, which I've got ready to roll. And then for the last little bit where I actually mix the muffins together, I'm gonna do that by hand because I don't wanna overmix my muffins, okay? So we don't want walruses on this, even though it's covered by topping. I still want a light and fluffy muffin. So I'm still gonna stick to the 8 to 10 stirring rule, okay? So I've got my recipe. I'm going to start by washing my hands, of course. Away I go. If you have not already watched the knife safety video, or you have not gone through knife safety with me before, you need to do that first. We are going to be slicing up some apples, so please make sure that you watch that and you've got that safety stuff under control because it's very, very important in the kitchen. All right, so as far as getting out equipment goes, I've got my big bowl. I will be using 2 big bowls, so I'm actually going to be using this one, and then I've got my KitchenAid mixer one as well. And then for small bowls, I think, oh, it does say, it says 2 small bowls, so I've got my first small bowl, and then I'm going to use my second small bowl. And again, I've got my liquid measure. You're just using a ton of stuff on this, but trust me, they're delicious, they're worth it. I've got my utility spoon and fork, my metal spatula, and I will grab my rubber spatula as well, and then I've got my measuring spoons and cups. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my rubber spatula, lots of my measuring stuff, and I'm gonna preheat my oven. So for this recipe, we will be doing convection 375 or 400 bake. And away I go. All right, so what I'm gonna use as far as knives go is I am gonna use my paring knife for this. Like I said, I have some frozen rhubarb, and that's typically what I do to rhubarb is if I buy it fresh at the market, I will chop it up, well, I'll wash it first, chop it up and then freeze it, and I throw it into stuff. I'm a huge fan of rhubarb, but you can definitely do this recipe with blueberries or raspberries. Strawberries work too. You can do pears, any of that stuff. So I have this quarter of an apple from my kids. They were eating apple as a snack earlier, so I saved it. And what I'm going to do is just peel the peel. And again, you do not have to pare it. If you want to peel using all means go for it. I'm just more comfortable doing this. So I will slice this off of my core and go as close to my core as possible. And then I'm going to slice these apple slices. Now, it does say to dice, but I like smaller pieces. So what I'm gonna do is slice my apples first, and then I'm going to dice them up. So I've got my slices. From there, I'm going to just put them into thinner pieces. And this is kind of what I'm looking at. It's kind of like a square, but with apples, it doesn't really always work like a square. So this one's a triangle, but yeah. So I'm gonna mix that in with my rhubarb. And that is about a cup. So I think I said 250 of diced apples. That's 1 apple, okay? So what I did instead is I did 125 of my rhubarb, and then I've got half an apple there to make 1 cup. So for my mix, I'm gonna put in my apples. I'm gonna put into my cinnamon, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I love cinnamon. So I'm gonna do my 2 milliliters of cinnamon into this. And if you're allergic to cinnamon, you do not need to put the cinnamon in. And I'm also going to put in my flour. I am going to be making these muffins for myself, so I'm going to be using gluten-free flour. But you guys can use your regular flour. I'm going to use flour in this recipe for the fruit, just to keep it whole and to kind of keep its structure, to make sure that it doesn't break down when you're cooking it. I've got 5, and I've got 10. So I'm done with my knife, so I'm going to make sure that I put it by my sink, ready for washing, okay? And you guys know that you always keep it in your sink, near your sink. You don't put it into your sink for washing. You always want to make sure you go aside. And then when you are washing it, you always want to make sure that you fold the cloth over top on the dull side, go down, never go back up, okay? All right, so I've got my mixture. I'm going to take my utility spoon, and I'm just going to mix it to make sure that all of this is well coated. Number 4, but I did this first just because I like getting the cutting stuff over with. It's just easier for me. Okay. So before I start to do anything with the stand mixer, I'm going to pre-measure everything. So I'm going to get my dry ingredients together. And so for this, I'm going to take my flour. I'm going to put my sugar. Oh, it says to put the sugar in there. I'm not going to put my sugar in there, okay? So even though it says in this recipe, and I will change that before, so you guys will get the correct recipe from online from Office 365. But my recipe that I showed you guys, don't put the sugar in there because we're going to be creaming the sugar together with the butter. Oh, Miss Marcus. Okay. So I've got my flour in there. To that, I'm going to add my baking powder. My salt. So it was 5 milliliters of baking powder and 1 milliliter of salt. got my dry ingredients, and that's ready to go. And I'm just gonna put it beside my mixer so that I know that that's good. The next thing I'm gonna do is get my liquids together. Okay, so I've got my egg. Very first thing I'm gonna do though is I'm gonna measure out my milk. Now I am using almond milk, and it's actually already got vanilla in it. So I am not going to put vanilla into this, but you guys will be. You guys will be putting in 5 milliliters. I am just going to measure up my milk. So it's just going to be 50. So again, I'm going to go down. I've got a flat, stable surface, eye level. I've got my 50 in my sights. And I'm going to go slightly above the line. To this, I'm going to add my egg. Now, if I was not confident in cracking my egg, I would do it in a little bowl. I think I'll be okay. Okay, so just done this, just cracked it. I'm gonna wash my hands. Dry them off. My oven's ready to roll. And I'm just gonna beat my egg. Okay, so I've got my egg mixture. It has turned yellowish. You guys will probably have it turn fully yellow, right? And I'm also gonna add it to this side because this is my liquid. For my KitchenAid mixer, I've got this beater on because I'm going to use it for my creaming as well as for my adding liquids. Now, creaming basically is when you mix together butter and sugar, and what it does is it allows the butter or the margarine to absorb the sugar, and your goal is to be able to do it until all of the little molecules of sugar get sucked up into the butter and it looks fluffy, okay? And we do this to add air and also just to kind of bring together the butter and the sugar. And it just makes for a really, really good item. Usually in cookies, we cream, and in cakes, we will cream as well, okay? This is a muffin recipe, and some of you guys are like, what? There's only supposed to be like 4 steps. But this is a more advanced muffin recipe, so we're gonna be creaming in this one as well, all right? So for creaming, what I'm gonna do is I am gonna take my margarine. So I've got it pre-sliced, and it's cold, and I want to use it cold. Okay, so I've got my margarine, I'm going to put it in my bowl. And I've already got my margarine set aside for my topping as well. So this is going to be for my topping. So I'm going to measure my brown sugar. So my first measurement is going to be for that bowl there. So I'm going to do 125. And again, whenever I have brown sugar, I pack. So I'm going to pack it down and then roll off. Whole. Let's try that again. So I'm going to put 125 in my bowl. And then for my topping, I'm gonna get that prepared as well. So I'm gonna need 50 for my topping. And this just makes it so that I can put my brown sugar away and I don't have to have it still. Just in case you're like, oh my gosh, you're popping around. All right. So in this bowl, I've got my butter, or my margarine in this case, and I've got my sugar. So I'm going to cream this together. Again, what I am looking for is I want to make sure that I have, it's light and fluffy, and then I've got all of my margarine that's soaked up the pieces of sugar. Now this one is still a pretty big chunk, okay? So I'm gonna let it go for just a little bit longer. I'm gonna grab my rubber spatula. And anything that's not mixed in, I'm gonna do it by hand with my rubber spatula. Okay, to this, I am going to add in my liquid. So again, if you don't have a stand mixer, you're just going to use your hand mixer. And I'm just gonna mix it together until it's pretty well blended. I am gonna have buttery chunks in there, that's totally fine. And that is gonna be the extent of my mixing with my stand mixer. So I don't wanna overmix my muffins. So I'm actually gonna take this off. And this is where I'm going to put in my dry, okay? So I'm gonna put it all in. I'm gonna get my mix ready, and I'm gonna focus on only mixing it until my batter is moistened. Again, this is a muffin recipe, so I want it to be lumpy. Okay. Once I get it like 3/4 of the way there, I'm going to put in my fruit. And I'm gonna start mixing it. And I want an even distribution of my fruit. And just to make sure that I do not have any dry batter. All right. So from here, I'm gonna leave this and I'm actually gonna work on my topping. I've got my 50 in here. So I've got my 50 milliliters of brown sugar. To that, I'm gonna add more cinnamon. So I'm gonna add another 2 milliliters of cinnamon. I'm gonna take my cold margarine. If you do not have a pastry blender at home, you can use a sturdy fork, okay? Instead, that's totally fine. And then just kind of, you want pea-like pieces, that's what you're going for. So I am gonna cut it in with my pastry blender. And it's kind of gonna be like mush, but trust me, it makes the most amazing topping. And I'm just gonna slightly turn my bowl as I go. And basically it'll create butter pieces that have soaked up sugar. Okay, so you do want them to be small just because it's easier to crumble them over top of the muffins. That way. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna spoon these out into my muffin cups, and I only want to go halfway, okay? Because these are gonna rise up, and this topping is going to, if you get this topping melted over, it'll be butter and brown sugar on your muffin tins, and it's harder to wipe off, okay? So again, I'm only gonna go halfway. And you guys are going to be using regular flour, so your muffins are going to rise higher than mine will with my gluten-free. So just factor that in. So I know the recipe says it makes about 10, but my muffin tins are smaller because they're cupcakes, muffin tins, but I love them. And so I will probably end up making 11 or 12. I lined 12. Off the last little bit. Some rhubarb. And again, if I do end up spilling onto my muffin tin, I want to make sure I wipe it off before I bake it. Prefer to get messy in this one, I'm just saying. Okay, so I've got all of them filled. I'm now going to take my topping, which kind of looks a bit like a mess, which is totally fine, and I am going to spread it out over top. So it's just going to be like margarine or butter chunks over top. And what this will do is it'll melt and then it'll crisp up as it cools. And if I have big chunks, I'm just gonna split them into smaller pieces. And this is why you have to make sure that your margarine is really cold, or else it'll just be kind of like a glom. Go. All right, so I've got my muffins. I'm going to make sure that I have nothing on my muffin tin before I bake it. I'm gonna wash my hands before I put them in. Ooh. put it onto the middle. And I think it says to bake for 25 minutes. Let's take a look. 20 to 25. So I'm going to set it for 20. I just turned off my oven. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, so I'll see you when these come out. Again, what we're looking for muffins is firm to the touch, nice golden brown. Sorry, I take back firm to the touch because you're gonna have the topping. So if you put your finger in there, it's gonna be buttery. Okay, so 20 to 25 minutes. You can use a toothpick if you want, but you do want to make sure that the sides are firm. Sorry, but don't put your finger in the butter. You guys are probably like, this doesn't make any sense, but let's see how this goes. But yeah, see you in a little bit.